Traditionally speaking, there are a lot of unwritten rules that come with politics. If you ask the vast majority of people who share my major at this university, most of them, a quite large percent of them, do not see themselves running for any sort of office. Whether they just hate the lifestyle, they don't think it's effective enough, or they just don't see the general purpose in it. A lot of people aspire to be attorneys, lawyers, you know, even bureaucrats. A lot of people would rather see themselves working in maybe the State Department or for a secretary or for the EPA, something along those lines, or maybe even the UN. Very rarely, believe it or not, do I see people who are like, yes, I'm 100% committed. I want to run for office one day, whether it be a state rep, a state senator, or, the president of the United States. And what's funny is I see a lot of kids on TikTok nowadays who are like in their early 20s, 18 to 19, saying, you know what, I'm going to run for president and I'm going to do this sweeping legislation and everything is going to work out according to my plan. I admire the ambition, but what I begin to notice as I learn and educate myself that there are a lot of unwritten rules that comes with politics. First of all, the idea of having a well-sounding name, I had a very interesting conversation with Vivek Ramaswamy about, how he's been um, outspoken about, being adamant about his Hindu beliefs and how people don't accept it and how he could have had the opportunity to change his name to something more easy to pronounce for the Western tongue, like Vic Ramsey or something, but he chose not to. And, he's still seeing, I guess, some success. Um, And then there's also small little things that people don't really think about, like beards. It's very uncommon now for the past hundreds of years for politicians to have beards, especially presidents. JD Vance has just broken that streak with being the VP. But if you look at most presidents since the 20th century, they've all had no beards. There's these small little written rules, and I think the biggest one that jumps out to me personally is the idea of nepotism and money. Obviously, there's a lot of nepotism in the workforce and the corporate world, and but I think it's not. I think it's much more prevalent than people realize in the political environment. I guess just speaking from my experience, there are a lot of kids my age I see, whether it be on LinkedIn or I interact with them in person, about, how did you get here? What was your path here? And a lot of this is, I know someone, I know this person, my dad's brother's cousin, knows them, they're donors, this and that. So, and obviously, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just pointing this out that this is how the game is played. On top of that, donors, you know, you need a shitload of money to run for any office. Um, I think even if you want to be a ward, an alderman for the city of Chicago, just a small little section of Chicago you want to preside over that, the starting price is going to be $1 million, even if you win. Um, the game in Chicago politics is who's going to get that Democratic nomination, because ain't no way in hell a Republican is going to win in the city of Chicago. But if anything, that just makes it more, um, contested. I tend to see that, counties and congressional districts where, the place is very lopsided, either Republican or Democrat, those seats are usually more subject to the insider of politics, in the sense where we know this seat is going to be very comfortable to stand on because we're the reigning party. So it's very hard for grassroots people to make it up. And that where I unequivocally agree with a lot of the Republican rhetoric of the Republican Party of introducing term limits. That's one of the things that the Republicans say that I 100% agree with. I think term limits are good. I don't think career politicians, are a net positive. necessarily. I think there are some obviously career politicians who have done great things, but I view it like the presidency position. You know, once FDR got comfortable with that seat, people started realizing like this could be very bad. And so I think applying that logic of you don't want to let someone use the bully pulpit and that incumbency advantage for too long in power, I think it makes righteous sense to at least apply that to maybe the governors or congressmen. I think the number is up for debate, but I think at least a term limit starting point or a conversation should be thrown out there. But circling back to the idea of like, what does it take for someone like me, right? There's always those Cinderella stories you hear about of people coming from nothing. But obviously, those are the stories you hear about because those are the most entertaining. Most politicians are born at the right place at the right time, grow up in the right environment, get a good job working for, a politician or an agency, and once a vacancy becomes open, then they get slid right into there, and the people act like they have a choice to vote for them in, but it's not really their choice. With that being said, people are always asking me, like, oh, do you aspire to run for office? Well, I mean, sure, in a perfect world, right? If a lot of people like what I have to say and a lot of my policies align with the people around me, I would consider it. But, there is the caveat of like, do I have that money? Probably not. Do I have that support? Like, I don't have anybody in politics that is like related to me. I'm not a Kennedy, I'm not a Bush, obviously. A lot of people think, Donald Trump was an outsider. He really wasn't. I mean, he knew Roger Stone, who just knew everybody and got comfy with Roy Cohn and Richard Nixon. So most of these politicians you might think are outsiders. I would beg to argue that they are a lot more insider than we think. But I will recognize that there is a possibility, and you're starting to see these small unwritten rules about politics start to shatter. Whether it be the beard thing about J.D. Vance or even John Fetterman not even wearing formal clothing as often as a senator should. And I think this is a good thing, honestly. I think breaking norms, breaking stereotypes is always good. But I don't know, maybe these are just lies and bluffs made me to think that the American dream, or at least the congressional or, running for office, that dream is still alive, that the average man can work his way up. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'd like to be on the side that I'll still believe it. And once I'm morally disappointed or pleasantly surprised, I will definitely let you guys know. But with that being said, thank you for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Enjoy your day.